Washington football. Woo! Hello, everybody, and welcome to the Burgundy Zone. I am your host, Kyle, and I'm joined by my two co-hosts, Michael Hall and Michael Reed. The Burgundy Zone is a part of the Frederick Podcast Network. You can find out more by going to www.listenfrederick.com. But we are rejoined by brother of the podcast, Mr. Logan Paulsen. How are you doing on this fantastic Friday, sir?
I'm good, man. Trying to get used to the heat, man. It's been warm out here the past couple of days, so getting used to that.
No, it's actually been warm out the last couple of days, so I'm trying to get used to that.
Yeah.
You need the sunlight, Reed. You need to get some tan.
No, dude, if I walked outside right now, I would be burned
like the
instantly.
jerseys behind you.
Yeah.
And speaking of getting burned, Logan, I have to get your opinion on this because ESPN did a ranking of the top 10 running backs in the NFL. They left Antonio Gibson off of that list. He sent a kind of cryptic tweet yesterday saying, I love the hate with like a fire symbol on it. Are you surprised at all by that list, or does it make sense to you?
Well, I haven't seen the list personally, but not really. I think when I'm just trying to think through it, like Jonathan Taylor, Derrick Henry, Dalvin Cook, I actually would probably rate the guy in Philadelphia, Sanders, ahead of him, just to kind of give you an idea. And I think it's, I've talked about it on this podcast many, many times. I think he's a very good football player. He's got tremendous upside. He's everything you want in a back, but he's not a polished runner just yet. He's still developing as a runner, and I think that's totally understandable, just having converted to the position. And it doesn't seem like to be the top 10 at any position is somewhat subjective. It's kind of like the beauty's in the eye of the beholder. Obviously, there's probably 5 guys that Chubb, that kind of pantheon of running back that sits atop the NFL at the moment. But after that, it gets a little bit dicey. I don't know who else is on the list. Do you have it in front of you, or is that going to be a big lift?
No, they weren't. They'd even include him in the honorable mentions that had guys like Austin Eckler in it and stuff like that, which was kind of that took me by surprise. I thought that he would maybe be an honorable mention, but I can understand the top 10, right? Because there is a lot of big names that get attributed to it automatically. But to your point, Antonio Gibson is still learning the position. I said this the other day. What guys are learning in high school and in college, he has to learn at the pro level going against world-class athletes. It's a natural progression, right?
Absolutely. I think that's 100% right. I think the thing with him that's really interesting is, he's so new to the position. And again, he's got all the skill sets. And, we just did the draft and you watch all these guys and see these guys with the tremendous, athleticism and upside, but they're not great runners, and they got to learn and grow into that athleticism. And it's more complicated than just being big, strong, and fast. So I think that's definitely part of the process. And, I understand why he wants that motivation, that kind of external motivating factor. But I think this year will be a big year for him. I'm excited to watch him. Every year I'm excited to watch him. I think he did an outstanding job growing last year. Obviously, there were some issues in terms of fumbling, but I think you saw flashes of what he can be. And I'm excited to see, what Brian Robinson's addition to the backfield does for him in terms of keeping him fresh. Because I don't think he's a guy who excels with 250 carries. I think you need to be more selective with your touches, put him in better situations, maybe give him kind of specific game plan runs where he can really execute at a high level. So I'm excited to see what that looks like. And then also the addition of, the 2 offensive guards, I think is going to be a big deal for him. And I think those guys might struggle in pass protection, but I do think they have a very high understanding of what Mascow, what Scott Turner want to do in the run game. So I do think the production will be better this year in terms of yards per carry and more effective per touch. So, while, top 10 list, whatever, not making the honorable mentions, whatever, statistically and analytically, I know a lot of people don't like him, but I think that's more just he's new and he'll figure it out and eventually be on that pantheon of guys.
Yeah. One thing that always surprises me about Antonio Gibson when I watch highlights is how big he is. I always forget that he's a bigger dude. He just so happens to be super, super athletic. He's a big, thick old boy. Not Seamus Ray is thick, but he's pretty thick. But so look, we're getting close to training camp, and I'm going to put you on the spot here a little bit. Who are 3 key players to watch this training camp? Just players that you're excited to see.
I'm excited to watch all the guys.
That's such a cop out. Everybody.
No, I'll give you a specific answer here. So what I'm going to say is that I really enjoy watching practice. I enjoy watching, especially the young guys, the draft class specifically, because the kind of anticipation of what they bring to this team, what they bring to this offense or defense, because the team did a good job. I think people criticize them a lot for kind of not drafting these big name guys or these kind of blue chip guys, but they did draft guys who are going to come in and play quite a bit right away. So I think all those draftable guys, I think tight ends are guys that I really like to watch just in general. Curtis Hodges, Cole Turner, those guys, just from an athletic standpoint, from a skill set, size, weight, speed standpoint, are really interesting to me as a fan of football, because you don't see many guys at that size be successful, but they do have kind of the athletic ability to get that done. So seeing them in pads is always exciting. Cam Curl's a guy, I know everyone's mentioned his name, but I think he did an excellent job in OTAs. He did an excellent job in 2021 in terms of playing football. And I think that he's kind of poised and positioned himself to have a really huge year. Montez Sweats, another guy that really sticks out to me. I mean, he didn't practice. I think he practiced, I want to say 5 days or 4 days of OTAs, but every day that he was out there, he was impacting this defense in a dramatic way. He seems like he's much more confident just in terms of his vote, like his how boisterous he is on the sideline, his leadership. And I think that always bodes well for guys who are kind of in that confident realm. And I think that's something, again, I want to see that. And obviously kind of the big kahuna is Carson Wentz and what he does for this team, because that position is so impactful for this team's success, offense and defense moving forward.
Yeah, 100%. And flipping to the defense.
His mic went out early this time. It doesn't want to let him be great.
Usually it's
right?
like 45 minutes in. Yeah, right now.
Right. But Logan, the Washington Commanders are celebrating their 90th year anniversary, so they're coming out with the 90 greatest players in the organization's history.
Really has to do.
Who's getting your vote for that? Sorry, you froze, Hall. So go after me.
I just realized that. I was like, what?
Yeah, so go after me.
Yeah. So the list, if I remember correctly, guys like Cooley, Fletcher, I think Champ Bailey should be on there in that group. Who else was on the list? I'm trying to think. Alfred Morris is a guy that I played with and I have a ton of respect for, and I don't think you're going to find a more effective back over a 3 year span. Like,
don't realize how good his rookie year was either. Like in terms of PFF, he was the highest rated rookie running back of all time.
Yeah, and so just being a part of that, like playing with him and seeing how productive he was. I know he didn't maybe have the longest career and he kind of fell off after he left here, but man, holy cow, was he a heck of a football player. And then I mentioned Cooley and Fletcher, and just in terms of defining kind of an era of Washington football, those guys should 100% be on the list. I saw that Trent was a late add. I think Trent would be an outstanding addition to this group. I think, he's maybe going to go down as one of the best offensive linemen of all time. His time here was a little bit up and down, granted, but I think when it's all said and done, he might be the greatest to ever do it, which is pretty exciting. And the fact that he was drafted here, started his career here, I understand there was some tumultuous ending here, but yeah, you got to help that guy out. He's got to be involved in that list, I think. And then I'm trying to think who else is on the list, because there's 10 people, right, that need to make it.
Yeah, I was just going to, like, if you had to pick one guy that you say has to be on that list.
Okay, yeah, then I would say probably Cooley, to be quite frank. I just think there was no better person, in my opinion, that kind of captivated that, like, aughts time frame in this franchise's history. I mean, there was no quarterback here. There was no big receiver. He was the offensive kind of spokesperson. I know his production always wasn't great year to year, but holy cow. And then in terms of like what he did for the organization after, in terms of broadcasting, things like that, he was how I identified this organization. When I was playing in college across the country, like there was no quarterback, there was no receiver. It was Chris Cooley, Captain Chaos, in the national commercials. He was the one that brought attention to this team, punching through the drywall, all that kind of stuff. So to me, that would be the guy. Him or Fletch would be the guys that I would probably put on that list, 100%, full stop.
And that playbook photo is what sealed the deal, right?
The Playboy photo you said?
I think the playbook photo.
Yeah, that was the one, man. If you've seen that, you just know that it has to be on there. He has to be there because of that.
Good for him, right?
What a legend, man. What a legend.
Not me.
Definitely. And going back to 2020, or 2021, I should say, this defense got off to a rough start the first half of the season. A lot was made about how they didn't really make adjustments. People were out of place, no communication. So what do you think that Jack Del Rio has to do this season coming up in the first half of this season, or the first couple of weeks, to kind of make sure that this defense doesn't get off to a rough start?
If I put my GM hat on, or my team president hat on, I'm going to say very little. Jack could basically wake up tomorrow and coach exactly the same as he did last year, and this defense is going to be significantly better at football.
Thank you.
It's just it's a byproduct of strength of schedule. It's a byproduct of the quarterbacks are going to play. It's a byproduct of just having the guys back in the same system, having the secondary there for a whole year, Like, it's the defense will be better. Now, to what extent that is, I have no idea. I do think additions, like sneaky, quiet additions like Fedarian Mathis, the guys who are just going to do what they're supposed to do, is going to help this defense play better. It's going to help Jamin. It's going to help Cole. Because I went back and I watched, Matt Ioannidis and like kind of trying to understand why they let him go. I played with him, got a lot of respect for his game. One of the best interior pass rushers of the last 10 years. And a guy, he just wasn't doing his job. He wasn't doing his job in an 8-man front. You got to do that. And you draft the guy in Fedarian who's going to do that. I think you're going to get a great year from Payne. I think you're going to get a great year from Allen. I think Montez, like I said, is poised for a big year. I think Jamin's going to develop into a solid starter. Cole kind of is on the verge of being something more than average in the NFL. And then the back end, I think, like I said, Cam is going to do some great stuff. Bobby's very solid. Kendall Fuller's a guy you can count on. If Benjamin St. Juste can fill that nickel role, you're cooking with gas. And I think after watching them, especially like the last 2 days of OTAs, last 3 days of minicamp, like they've got some stuff in the bag that's going to make this group special. The big concern there for me with them is not coaching necessarily, just depth. Like, like what do they do? If someone in the secondary gets hurt, like what's the answer? They have a lot of talent at safety, which I'd like to see. Forrest and Percy Butler I think Forrest is going to flash in training camp. I think he's kind of one of those physical bruiser thumper type guys. And Percy, I think, kind of started figuring out in the last couple of days of OTA's mini camp. So good depth there. But at corner, I mean, the guy that impressed the most outside of those top two guys is Christian Holmes and Benjamin St. Juste. So usually you need a fifth corner, a guy you can count on. And I don't know, I don't know. So, they signed that gentleman who played in the XFL. I think that's good. But I think you need something more, just need more depth there. Linebacker, they have 4 guys. Usually you carry 5. What are they doing there? Not that, Mayo and Khaleke Hudson have done a great job. Just that 5th rotational piece, where does that fit? And then, they've done some interesting stuff on the interior in terms of depth with some of the defensive ends playing in there, which I think is a nice move by them. But that's the big question for me. If you get a kind of an injury bug or people get sick or whatever it is, like what is your solution? I don't see an obvious one right now.
Yeah,
right.
And the 2 USFL DBs that Washington added is DeJuan Hill and Channing Stribling.
Yeah.
Sorry.
Yeah. So you touched on him a little bit, but I want to talk about my fellow Canuck and one of my favorite players, my favorite Canadian, Benjamin St. Juste. Okay. What do you expect him to bring to this defense? Do you like the idea of him in the nickel? And what have you seen from him?
I like good football players, and he was a guy that I was really impressed with early on last year. I know everyone was like, "Oh, his coverage grade is whatever," but when I go back and watch that LA game, the Charger game, and the coverage he was kind of blanketing on two of the best receivers in the NFL. Definitely top 20 type guys. Like that's a guy who's got great length, great kind of the moment was not too big for him, so great confidence. And I just think he needs to grow a little bit. And like nickel's a tough spot to grow, but he did a great job with that role during OTAs and minicamp. And I know they don't have pads on. I know it's a physical position traditionally, but I liked what I saw from him there. And I think they need to get him on the field. Early on in OTAs, I said, well, if you're going to do something here, Benjamin St. Juste needs to probably play outside corner, and you need to figure out a way to get William Jackson III off the field. But I think with him moving into the slot, William Jackson playing better as that offseason period got on, I think you feel really good about those 3 guys, and Kendall does a great job. So to me, the big question with him at the nickel is just the concussion thing. I know that's maybe unfair of me to Levy. I mentioned that before, but it's a physical thing. You're gonna have to fit runs. You're gonna have to blitz. You're gonna have to do some stuff that's a little bit more kind of safety-esque in terms of demand on the body. And there's a guy who couldn't get out of the concussion bug, and we've seen how that plays out with a guy like Jordan. And I don't want that to be the case, but that's a concern that I have. And again, what are we in July right now? But that's something, a question that needs to be answered for me during when the pads are on in training camp and in the preseason.
Yeah, and then I saw in the latest episode from the Commanders show with Julie Donaldson and Santana Moss that you had a brief conversation with Coach Ron Rivera, and you talked about Jamin Davis. If you could go into some detail, what did Rivera say about Jamin's progress so far?
Yeah, so he says some stuff on camera, he says some stuff off camera. So it's been so long, I'm probably going to mix them together. So the thing that stuck out to me is like when you watch practice, Jamin seems to be playing with he's kind of tapping into his athleticism. He's running to the football. He's being more decisive to double teams. He's doing things that you'd expect him to do. Last year, you could just tell he was swimming. He couldn't play fast. He's getting to a point where he's starting to recognize stuff. He can diagnose stuff. And one of my favorite things with a linebacker, especially a guy like Jamin, who's kind of this physical freak, and say what you want about him as a linebacker, like there are not many people on God's green earth who are as athletic as him and as big as he is. So if he gets it figured out, it's going to be pretty special. Like there were times where, the ball snapped and he is teleporting to the football. That's not every play, but I like to see that because last year there was no signs of that. It was just kind of a guy who didn't really know what was going on. And so when he talked to Ron was like, yes, I like that progression. I've seen that also. I think he's a guy who needs to get a lot of reps. He just needs a ton of time. Again, it's well documented how he didn't have a lot of experience coming out of college. So this is his time to get some experience. And is he going to be perfect? No. And does he still have to work on his block destruction techniques? Yes. Does he still have to work on his tackling? Yes, because they didn't do any tackling during this phase. But there were some encouraging signs that he's going to be able to fit a role for them and be a significant contributor to this defense, which is what this defense needs. They need him to step up if they're going to be successful this year.
Absolutely and totally agree, Logan. But I only have a couple more questions for you to wrap this up. My next one for you, the base defense, like a lot of it's considered a 4-3, but they only played 30 snaps of 3 linebackers on the field last season. And Rivera talked about wanting to be able to contest versus a 4 wide receiver, 3 wide receiver set. So my question is, should we be considering the base defense to be a 4-3 or a 4-2-5, or does it even matter?
It doesn't really matter. I think you're going to get a lot of variation in terms of the structure the defense is playing. And I think when you have the defensive line talent that you've got, you want to get into five defensive linemen. So what are you going to do there in nickel situations, like passing situations traditionally? You're going to bring in an extra linebacker, but you want to bring in an extra defensive lineman. So 1 linebacker, 5 defensive linemen, probably 3 safeties. I think that's the way they're going to go there, and kind of help the pass rush, help the coverage by bringing a safety in. So not a lot of linebackers, I don't think. I think if they are in 4 down, it's that people just don't play a traditional 4-3 anymore. It's not very common. I think the last team that does it quite a bit is like Minnesota, just because they've got 3 athletic dudes that can get that done. But I don't think they have the personnel here to get that done. I don't think they need to get that done. They don't seem to want to get that done. So I would expect them to be in 5 down quite a bit. 4 down with 2 linebackers and a Buffalo nickel, a Cam Curl playing kind of that linebacker role. So yeah, I don't think the base structure is a 4-3. I mean, that's what they're going to say in terms of installations. You start with a 4-3, but the personnel is not going to be your traditional 4-3 personnel.
Hall.
Yeah. I just had one more question. It's kind of a 2-part question, but just real quick for the offensive side of the ball. So training camp is like a week and a half away, or a little bit less than that. What do you need to see from Carson Wentz during training camp to kind of make you think that, or make you say that, okay, this offense should be good going into the season? And to kind of piggyback off of that, Curtis Samuel, if he's healthy and Jahan Dotson is what everyone thinks he is going to be coming out of OTAs and minicamp, who's going to be more important to this offense going forward?
That's a good question. The thing about Carson that's really confounding, I find, is that I think I mentioned this somewhere, but he had one of the best kind of OTA periods I've ever seen from any quarterback I played with, right? He did a really nice job. And then I went and talked to one of my buddies in Philly, and I was like, man, like Carson looks like he's turned over a new leaf, looks like things are totally different for him. And the guy was like, well, he always looks great in spring because there's no pressure on him, right? And I was like, oh, like that's not a great sign of like this. No questions have been answered in terms of that. Despite how well he looked and despite how productive he was, like the biggest question with him is his mental fortitude. And like I would say that to his face if he was here. Like I would say, man, like I loved everything you did, but I got to see it when the stakes kind of ramp up. Because even if you look at his kind of PFF, if you look at kind of his general statistical effectiveness, he's one of the least effective quarterbacks in high stress situations. So how can he learn to manage those situations? And I want to see how he handles that as we get closer to season. Is he emotionally ready for the demands of this? Because if he's not, then the quarterback production will be better than it was last year, no doubt. But this team will not be the best team in the division, which they're perfectly capable of if he plays well. And in your part 2 question, in terms of who's more significant in terms of impact, I think Jahan right now. I mean, that's how good his OTA period was. That's how sharp he looked. Like he is going to be the number 2, possibly number 1, 1A, 1B with Terry. And that is a dynamic combination. Now, he has some weaknesses in his game that like when he matches up with Benjamin St-Juste, the length, the physicality, things that kind of pose some problems for him. But man, he was very, very sharp during this period. Everything you saw from his college tape was on full display. He's a pro's pro, from what I understand, talking with people in the building. I just think he's going to be a big feature of this offense. Now, will Curtis be an impact? 1,000%. But Jahan just kind of put his stamp on this offense in a really nice way. And obviously, you need to see that continue. If it doesn't continue, then my answer is going to change during training camp. But as of right now, he's the guy that I think is going to really change the dynamics of this offense.
I love to hear that. And speaking of, Logan, my last question for you. Football Outsiders had a whole article on the NFL, and they highlighted the Commanders. And this jumped out at me about Jahan Dotson from FootballOutsiders.com. The concerns about his size also stood up in contested catches situations, which will be a problem for him in the NFL with needing further development.
Really putting the outsiders in Football Outsiders.
What is your reaction to hearing that?
I mean, I think that's a person who... So when you watch film, when you're doing evaluations, you can kind of find what you want to find, right? You can kind of, if you sniff hard enough, if you look hard enough, you can find a player's deficiency or how effective they are in certain situations. And so what I think some scouts do, and I've had this conversation not with just scouts, but with media personnel, with some of my favorite talent evaluators ever, and they have little things they look for that really bother them. And size with receiver is one of those things that bothers people. And they say because of his frame, he has a hard time with contested catches. And then they seek out in the tape times where he drops contested catches. And you can do that. And you can say, here, look at this as an example of him struggling with a contested catch. And I would say that there is stuff in his tape to support that. But I say in general, his ability to make contested catches, it seems to be better than him struggling in that area. Right. So I think he's a better person at contesting the football, at making contested catches, than he is at not doing that. And yes, are there limitations to his game? 100%. That's true of everybody. But I also think that contested catches in terms of where the NFL is going is becoming less and less relevant. The people that are most effective from a statistical standpoint as the receiver position are guys that create separation. And he seems, at least to the OTA period in his college tape, a guy who's very, very capable of doing that and excels in that area, in fact. So, yes, I think he's good in contested catch area, but I also think it's not as relevant. That statistic is not as relevant as it used to be. Devontae Parker has the highest contested catch percentage in the NFL. He also has the lowest yards after catch. He also has the least explosive plays. Like, it's not the end-all, be-all, that contested catch statistic. And I also think in some ways it's bad if you have a high contested catch number. Right. It's one of the reasons I look at Terry, for example. They say, oh, he's led the division in contested catch. I'm like, well, he's not creating enough separation. Now, that's a multifaceted element because the quarterback might be like the football, the timing of the concept, the situation in which he's getting the ball. All those things are relevant, but I do think that it's not quite as relevant as it used to be. And so what I would say to that person, I'd say, these are the plays that I think support his ability to contested catch, to make contested catches. And these are the other elements of his game where I think he's excels, where this is not, these drops or these issues are not an issue. And there were some people who had a stick up their butt about him in terms of getting off press coverage. I didn't see that. I think he saw more diverse coverage packages in college at Penn State because he was the only guy in that offense, and that's what happened. So again, everyone's got their opinion. Everyone can find what they want to find. I don't agree with that necessarily. But yeah, and that's why I don't agree with it.
Right, God, Professor Paulsen is hot,
and I understand exactly I know exactly what you mean. Like when you're scouting a player, and if a player's only thing they good at is contested catches, that worries you about the route running, creating separation, everything like that. Having a guy that could create separation and is also good at contested catches, that's when things start heating up because the numbers don't support the Football Outsiders here. Per receptiondeception.com, Logan, he was 4th in college football last season in contested catch rate. Just to show you. It's amazing.
And again, like when you turn the film, you see a guy who's outstanding at catching the football. He's got outstanding concentration on the football in the air. So that number doesn't surprise me. And again, like I think that's one of those people who says, oh, he's 184 pounds. He's, what is he, 5'11". Like he's too small to be successful in the NFL. And that just, I don't think that presents itself. Because one of the things that in my scouting report I wrote on him, I was like, he catches the ball like a much bigger man.
Yeah.
And again, like I don't agree with that. They're entitled to their opinion. I don't think they watch the same stuff I've watched, or they've, that's the other thing. This is a rant. We're ranting now. When you are in When you are a national media member, you don't have time to watch every single player. You just don't, unless you're, like one of these draft gurus, but you don't. And so you make assumptions, you kind of expedite that process. And I kind of feel like that's what's happening there.
Yeah, absolutely.
Make small receivers great again. That's what I'm going to make a hat that says that.
No, seriously. And then before you get you out of here, Logan, I just want to let you guys know to go follow his podcast, the Take Command podcast, but also go follow him on Instagram at Logan_Paulsen82. Logan, I can't thank you enough for taking your time out, be able to talk some ball with us, sir. This was great.
Appreciate it, guys. Always have a blast. And excuse my long-winded responses.
No, I absolutely love it. I'm soaking it all in, Logan. Trust me. I'll see you on Call of Duty later.
All right, no,
he won't. I will, though.
We're in a clan now. We're making it happen.
Yeah, Kyle's not playing. Kyle's not invited.
All right, everybody. Thanks, Logan.
Xbox over here.
All right, everybody. We just spoke with the man, Mr. Logan Paulsen. I absolutely love hearing
so
Logan.
much knowledge,
dude.
So much knowledge.
Here, you could tell how passionate he was about the Football Outsiders thing when he was just going on and basically just like, you guys just kind of seeing what you want to see. And I love that about him. It's so him. It's so us. Like he does that all the time. It's crazy.
Yeah, I just thought that article about about the Commanders, because they were very harsh about the Commanders, especially with Carson Wentz. And look, this is something like we should be used to at this point, right? Any ranking, and like with Antonio Gibson, like I asked Logan, any ranking, any list, they're always going to be at the bottom. They're going to be poo-pooed. And I like it. We're the bad boys of the NFL, man. But obviously the stats don't support that. And so I just thought it was asinine that was like one part of it where it's like that is actually one area he does well at.
Right. It's one of those things where it's so cliche to say, but it's really until you start winning, until we start like regularly winning, and it's not going to change. But like you see that like people have a hard time putting Terry as a top 15 receiver, and it's like, come on, like just let's be honest. If Terry had some of these quarterbacks that some of these guys have that are in front of him, you really think Terry wouldn't ball out? Look what he did with Taylor Heineke last year. Like,
then remember when I was arguing with people last season about Terry being an elite wide receiver in this league, when I was arguing with JP from the Junkies, my one rebuttal is there's only a handful of wide receivers who exist in bad quarterback climates. DeAndre Hopkins is one of those guys. The other wide receivers you're considering have good quarterbacks throwing them the football. So that's why I view Terry McLaurin as elite, because only a special type of player can exist and flourish in that type of environment like Terry and DeAndre Hopkins did when he was with the Texans. So I just find it really, really funny how just everyone poo-poos it, man. It doesn't make any sense.
Classic JP.
Yeah. I mean, look, it's just like he said, the national media doesn't have time to focus on every single team and every single player position. So they just go with the lazy narrative. It's Washington. What have they done recently? Nothing much. Okay, let's just write down whatever we need to write down, keep it moving. So it's a lazy narrative. And like Reed said, it really doesn't change until you actually start winning consistently. Because like you said, look at a guy like Terry who gets no national recognition, no stardom, but you ask guys across the league, they're like, oh, scary Terry. So it's just one of those things where you got to start winning and get like a national spotlight on yourself. And in a positive way.
Not only that, Ocho Cinco loves himself some Terry McLaurin.
Ocho Cinco loves himself some Terry.
And speaking of Ocho Cinco, let's go into our fan questions. The first one is from Andy Lockhart in the Discord chat server. Oi! Thank you, Andy.
Oi.
He said, I have just seen a list of top 15 trash talkers in the 21st century in the NFL.
Okay.
OBJ, Odell, was at 14. That guy can't trash talk to save his life. Who would you have there at 14 instead of that fool? And the reason why I said Ocho Cinco, because he's number one on that list.
Okay,
which
I was about to say.
Yeah.
Well, as soon as I was like, where's he going with this? Like, is this going to be a question about Ocho? But then as soon as you said trash talkers, I was like, okay, that makes sense. Yeah, that was a good transition.
Yes.
I don't know who's on that list. Was Josh Norman on there?
Yes.
Yeah.
Okay. So then never mind. Let me go back to the well and start thinking a little bit more. You know what I'm saying?
For me, Andy, I would replace Odell with, I think, Cortland Finnegan, a guy who got Andre Johnson so pissed he made him fight him. And everyone knows Andre Johnson is like a gentle giant.
Super level-headed,
right?
calm,
and like Cortland Finnegan was able to get into his head. If you talk to any wide receiver in the AFC South or heard them talk, they talked about how much of a pest Cortland Finnegan was. And so like
peasant.
Right. And I put this on Facebook when I shared it. When I saw the same ranking as you did, Andy, I wrote on there, I was like, why is Odell on this list? This is best trash talkers, not break dancers. If we're talking about dancers, then yeah, Odell deserves to be on this list. But talking trash, the only person he talked trash to was like the kicking net, and he even lost that battle. So I don't know what we're doing here.
It's because of the whole him and Josh Norman beef. Straight up like that.
But they didn't even talk trash.
I know. I feel like they
had those big fights and stuff, and they had like bringing out a bat before the game and whatnot. But that was mainly Josh Norman just being tight.
Yeah.
You know?
Yeah, I feel like they put OBJ on there just because Josh Norman was on the list. They're like, oh, who is his biggest foe? Oh, OBJ. So he got to be on the list. But I don't know if he deserves to be at like number 14, but a guy that I've heard other players say that he's a big trash talker and like he was just always running his mouth. And I mean, let's be honest, he was here for a little bit and ran his mouth a lot in a good way. DJ Swearinger. I feel like that's a dude that's just tough as hell. Yeah. Tough as hell, always running his mouth.
Dude, the Terrell Pryor video from training camp?
Yeah.
Exactly. That's what I'm saying. So I like DJ Swearinger on that list as well.
That's a great one, Hall. When DJ Swearinger had, like, he faked out Terrell Pryor by acting like he was about to punch him, and then Terrell Pryor literally turned all the way around.
Yeah.
that was a fantastic video. That will live. That's legendary.
Yeah, another one. Just I don't, like I said, I haven't seen the list, but that comes to mind that I don't think would be on there, but maybe you could make an argument for would be Brian Cushing. Brian Cushing was just so funny because he was always steroided up. That dude was on so many roids and like banging head against helmets and stuff. It just got me going.
Right, and now we are joined by our next guest, Mr. Corey Sanchez on the Warpath.
Look at that beautiful helmet behind him. It's so pretty and matte.
Thank you. I just found it.
Did you? It's a big one.
Found it, yeah.
What does that do? Does that fit on Kyle's big ass head?
Probably not.
Nah. It's only
especially
for me.
Not on the one on my shoulders. But Corey, now that you're with us, we just answered this great question from Andy Lockhart in the Discord chat server. He was kind of talking about the NFL came out with the 21st century biggest trash talkers in the NFL, and Odell was listed at 14. Andy Lockhart saying, why is Odell on there at 14, and who would you replace him with?
Ooh, who would I? And this is over the last, 2 decades or something?
Yeah, 21st century, yep.
Ooh, I mean, I hate the Eagles. Brian Dawkins, Brian Dawkins back in the day. Like, he would, I'll never forget what he said. He's like, I'm Michael Jackson before he went crazy. I'll be there. So it's stuff like that. I think I like Phillip Rivers because I think
he's on that list. Yeah.
Yeah. The no pull out Poppy. He just, it was just, he showed his intelligence because he could get him under people's skin and not use couldn't use a profanity there. So I think that he's one of those trash talkers, but I thought it was trash talkers, not trash. That's why when I saw Josh Norman up there, so it was shocking to see him up there. But, it is what it is.
Obviously, Tom Brady's on that list, right? Because he's obviously the go-to that you think of.
Is he on that? I don't think he is actually.
He should.
Richard Sherman had to be on there, right?
Yeah, sure. You know who else was really good that nobody really talks about? Bart Scott. Bart Scott was funny as hell.
Yeah, Bart Scott was funny.
You know who
can't wait.
You know my honorable mention is? My honorable mention is Sean Taylor. There was this one clip they showed against the Detroit Lions, and one of the wide receivers was talking trash. Like, they were at the pregame huddle, all meeting up, and all the Redskins players are looking towards the tunnel at themselves. They're all meeting up in that group, looking at each other. The Detroit Lions wide receivers mouthing off to them, and Sean turns around and just stares at him, like moving side to side, just looking at him. The dude's talking trash to him. Later in that game, that guy was on kick return. Or no, he was on punt coverage. And so Sean comes up and literally cleans his clock with a blindside block. Almost takes his head off his body. And then we got the whole spit thing down in Tampa. I think Sean could be one of those guys. Obviously, we weren't on the field with him.
He didn't have to talk that much.
He
was just so intimidating.
He did it with his play, and that's what I mean.
And he would just stand there and look at you, and you'd be like, "Okay, I'm pissing my pants right now. What's up?
What's up?" And Reed knows all too well about those.
I piss my pants.
I meant more about your son. I meant more about your son.
Oh no, I do it too, though. Yeah, no, I do it.
So that was funny too. But Corey, I got to go with you with this next question. This is from our guy Jeff Miles in the Discord chat server. Which player seems to have the most confidence in the team this season, and why? Are they full of it, or are they legit?
You said which player? Is that what he said?
Yes.
I think it's got to be our guy that just signed the contract, man. Terry McLaurin, I think the confidence is there for him, and he's got the insurance on the field, and he's got it in his wallet now too. He's got a good, a legitimate NFL arm. No shots at Taylor, but Carson's arm is better than Taylor's. We know that. So I think Terry, and just the way he works it, he seems unbothered by most things. I know there were a couple of setup questions, especially in that press conference from, I think, the USA Today, but we won't get into that too much. But and he just very professional, very calm. There's just a calm, quiet confidence about this dude, and that I think it rolls with him. And then I think you could do 93 as well. John Allen is one of those guys as well too.
Yeah, for me, I'll have to use Antonio Gibson. He really has been feeling himself, and he should. He was kind of injured last season. It was underreported. He battled through it all season long, rushed for 1,000 yards, had double-digit touchdowns, didn't fumble in his first season, but fumbled a lot last season. And yeah, they were at bad times, but I feel like Antonio Gibson is really starting to feel himself. He's really starting to get confident in his skin, essentially, as a running back. Finally transitioning in his third year, he feels comfortable in that spot. For me, I think it's Antonio Gibson finally feeling fully confident in his play at running back. What do you think, Hall?
I'm going to go with Cam Curl. I think that's a guy that Ron Rivera talked about coming into the season, how he was like kind of gaining a voice in the locker room, becoming one of those vocal leaders. And even if he's not a vocal leader, he's a guy that flies around on the field and just plays with a lot of confidence. So I definitely think that his confidence just goes out and exudes out to the rest of the team, even if he's not like a big talker. Just the way he plays and the way he carries himself on the field, on and off the field. I think that bodes well for the team and the locker room as far as like confidence.
Reed, you're picking Sammis Reyes, right?
Obviously. Yeah. So what was the exact question? It kind of cut out when the question was asked.
Which player seems to have the most confidence in the team this season, and why? Are they full of it?
So I mean, you guys all named a bunch of people that I think are fantastic. I think Cole Holcomb right now is somebody else who's he's flying under the radar to a lot of people, but like the team seems to be really pushing him out there. And I really think Cole takes this team seriously. I think that he's ready to step up and be a leader and kind of be the linebacker on this team right now that kind of sticks out. And I think the teammates really kind of rally around him, kind of look for him to make a play like he did against Dallas. And I'm really excited to see what Cole Holcomb's got from here on out.
Yeah, that's a very good one. I think those 4 selections were spot freaking on, man. You couldn't get better with that. But, Reed, I want to go with you with this next question from Andy Lockhart in the UK. Okay. Who are you picking number 1 in fantasy football redrafts?
Fantasy football redrafts?
Yes.
I don't know, dude. I haven't done any fantasy right now. Go ahead. Somebody else answer this one.
For me, I'm going Cooper Kupp. I'm in our big money league. I have him as my 5th round keeper. So essentially, I would be able to get the number 1 overall pick in the 5th round, and I'm all for that. Just because the guaranteed of receptions are there, and I know, and the biggest concern for me is Allen Robinson though being added, because obviously in Chicago he wasn't utilized to his full extent, and he's obviously going to be hungry coming in with Matt Stafford and company, ready to put up big numbers that he was lacking in Chicago. So I do think that's going to take a little bit away, but the offensive firepower at that offense, I think Cooper Kupp is guaranteed, and that's what the number 1 spot is for, is the biggest guarantee on your roster. For me, that's Cooper Kupp. What about you, Hall?
Since I'm a former NFL scout that worked under Bill Parcells and Bill Belichick, I would obviously pick Tebow because he's going to score like 15 touchdowns passing and run. I'd probably say Devontae Adams. Honestly, I think that a lot of people are saying
number 1 overall pick.
Yeah, I think that. I don't think it was just Aaron Rodgers that made Devontae Adams. I think that Devontae Adams is going to show that I'm still that dude without Aaron Rodgers. Him and Derek Carr are going back to college. They're like best friends off the field already.
Yeah.
So I definitely already got that sync in that synchronized synchronization, whatever the hell the word is, in them. And I definitely think that with Darren Waller on the team, and I think they added another receiver. I can't think right now. Oh, Hunter Renfrow. They got Hunter Renfrow as well in the slot. I definitely think that Devontae Adams should and could be worth a number overall pick.
Yeah, you brought up my hairline cousin, Mr. Hunter Renfrow, stealing my hairdo.
Thought you were going to say Derek Carr.
No. No, he has a great hairline. Me, not so much. Corey.
But you guys look alike, so.
That's true. Who would you be picking number 1 overall in fantasy football? Are you a big fantasy football guy?
Yes and no. But I would take that running back out of Philadelphia, Jalen Hurts. I think he runs the ball. Oh, wait a minute. Oh, crap. Sorry. Roll pause. Let's reset this. Look, it's all about the ground game in fantasy, boys. Y'all keep on talking about, y'all trying to be sexy with these wide receivers.
That's true.
Hey, look, who has a senior citizen quarterback? The Indianapolis Colts. They can't get the quarterback spot right. Jonathan Taylor. Exactly. That is my man. Until he proves me wrong, I will go with Jonathan Taylor as my top pick, because I think Indianapolis has shown that they can't get the quarterback situation right, and they're going to lean on him. so he's going to get the yardage. Give me Jonathan Taylor.
My only counter to your argument there is I'm thinking like PPR formats.
Okay, I got you.
But I would put it out there that maybe they kind of stress on throwing the football a lot in Indy in order to justify the move from moving on to Carson Wentz to Matt Ryan. But obviously Jonathan Taylor is a great selection. I just, with PPR value, I just personally, obviously I'm wrong, but I put Cooper Kupp ahead of Jonathan just in PPR. But obviously Jonathan Taylor is arguably the best running back in the league right now.
Yeah, he's gonna rack up a hell of a lot of touchdowns. So I mean, it's a good pick.
It is a good
we can get McKissick, guys. If JD's healthy, I call him PPR God because he's always come on now.
Yeah, you're absolutely right, Corey. Now, this next question is from the Colonel Corey. His question is, anything to get excited about with either of these two cornerbacks we just signed?
No. No. I mean, it's a good story, but let's be honest with you. I think Will Adams, who was on here from Virginia State, and I watched, I've seen Deshaun Neal. He was in the Mountain East Conference when UVA Wise was there. I saw his, or cream of crop at Shepherd at the time, down there in the PSAC. But there's one of my favorite plays. My wide receiver, Keon Duverger, basically mossed all of them. And they beat us, sadly, but he was part of that group that got mossed on that play. And Randy Moss even had it. So I don't think it's anything to get excited for, just as a good camp story. You know, it's I know Pete had him on the radio earlier today, but it's nothing to really get excited for until they get into camp and you know, maybe play a couple of downs and stuff, or where they're going to play it. So
I won't say it's exciting, but I will say it's intriguing because both of these guys played with the USFL. They've played in multiple leagues, going all the way, trying to get into league, and so signing them. But Channing Stribling, he had 7 interceptions last season with the Philadelphia Stars, and then DeJuan Hill played with the New Jersey Generals last season in the USFL. So they have some experience, and it's intriguing because obviously with Channing Stribling having 7 interceptions last season, you could talk about the competition level quarterback. We can all agree on that. Just saying, an opportunistic kind of corner, that is intriguing because if they have the opportunity to do so, generally they come up big, and that was something like Jimmy Moreland was infamous for here in Washington. But our next question, I'm going to go to you, Hall. This is from Damn Yankee Huffman Dave. Thank you, Dave. Linebacker, why haven't we signed a vet? Are we waiting for training camp cuts? I can't fathom the coaches thinking that we're good to go at that position.
Well, you might have to fathom it because we just talked Logan on earlier, and he was saying that a lot of teams are just running that 4-2-5, and that they're not really running that base 4-3 anymore. And there's only 2 linebackers on the field at most times anyway, and it doesn't seem like Washington is really concerned about adding another linebacker. Maybe, like you said, depth-wise, but a guy's going to come in and be like a high-impact guy and like be a heavy rotational guy. It's possible if someone like they see gets cut and they like him, but as of right now, I would just bank on what did Logan say? They have 4 linebackers on the roster right now.
I think
either 4 or 5, something like that. So I would just bank on the 5 guys I have and hope that everyone stays healthy at this point.
Yeah, and I don't know why they haven't signed a linebacker yet. I think Ron Rivera is very confident in their scheme and being able to get somebody in here who can produce, and that's why I do feel like the door for Landon Collins is open more so than it was 2 weeks ago, just because when Logan was talking about that Buffalo nickel role, he talked about being able to be fast, be able to cover a lot of ground, these tight ends and wide receivers at times, and that, to me, screams Landon Collins. And I know that there's not many other guys on this roster, but I was thinking, like, because if you go back to my clip of Jamin Davis from last year against the Kansas City Chiefs, he ran with Tyreek Hill on not an out, but it was a corner route. He was with them stride for stride. Why can't they play Jamin Davis in some sets at Buffalo nickel if they're in like a heavy package sort of way and bring Jared Mayo in? But why haven't they signed a linebacker yet? Not 100% sure, but I would imagine they are comfortable with what they have. I would rather this than them being like panicked about the situation, getting anybody in here. Just my opinion. What do you think, Reed?
Yeah, the question was James finally fell off the TV stand. Why haven't they signed anybody? Yeah, like you said, I think it's a comfortability thing. I think that if they do sign somebody, they want to bring in the right guy. I think that they would want to bring in a veteran, but there are still some people on the table, I would imagine, because there's still some guys out there. But yeah, like you said, I think that they really, really just want to get these young guys. Like Ron like Logan said, Ron says that Jamin Davis needs reps. That's the most important thing. They don't want to probably take anything away from him. They want to see what he can do with more and more reps, get more and more experience. The better he gets. Cole's been fantastic. They don't use 3 linebackers a lot, so it'll be interesting to see what they do. I don't know if they'll bring anybody in though.
Yeah, and that reminds me of the comment that was made a couple weeks ago from minicamp, and somebody talked about Jamin Davis and intriguing to see what happens with him this year because he was playing with the ones and he was playing with the second team as well, and they were wondering maybe he took a step back and they were demoting him. No, it's Ron Riveras saying he needs reps, so they're giving him as many as freaking possible. What do you think, Corey?
Are there any Carolina Panther linebackers out there for me? That's what most people say. No, but
Luke Kuechly, baby.
Yeah. Well, he joined he's like in their scout department or something now.
Is he now?
I think he signed somewhere with the
down
Panther.
in Carolina.
Yeah. But I thought Luke would have been great here. But
Me too.
I don't really see a problem with it. I think we always panic because we base everything on last year. Jamin is athletic. I don't think he shouldn't have played as early as he did, but down the stretch there were flashes down the stretch of what this young man can do. And then we know what Cole can do. So if these guys are the top, if Cole's going to take that Mike spot and leave less thinking to Jamin and just letting him to go out there and attack, I want to see this work out. I want to see this happen. And it's a process. You're building a program. You've got to give your guys an opportunity. He's a first-round pick. You got to give him these opportunities. If it doesn't work out, then we'll look and say hindsight's 20/20 and should have got somebody. But right now, it's nobody really. I don't know how Anthony Barr, just because he's a sexy name on the market, is going to fit in here.
Right.
So, or does he want to come here?
I've been saying that for weeks because it doesn't translate to what they want with being able to cover a lot of ground because that's not Anthony Barr's forte. That's why I said if we're going to go with a slow linebacker, I'd rather be somebody like John Bostic who knows the defense and can wrap up tacklers. But let's go to our next question from Commander OC to you, Hall. Who has more to prove this season, the defensive line as a whole unit or Carson Wentz?
Ooh, that's a good question.
I know George asked this question about Chase Young or Wentz, and I said Chase Young. But I think as a whole, like Jonathan Allen's already got his contract. More than likely, either Montez Sweats either going to get a contract or they're going to franchise him. So he'll be here next year regardless unless he has like a super, super, super down year. And you got Deron Payne, but apparently there's possibility you might re-sign him as well. So I would say Carson Wentz just because those guys pretty much, they're younger. They have the future ahead of them. If Carson comes here and fails and flunks out and gives you Taylor Heineke type numbers of last year, then more than likely Carson Wentz is going to be just like Taylor Heineke. He's going to be a career backup going forward, maybe a spot starter for like another team or maybe a bridge guy for like a 1 year, a couple games, half a season, something like that. But yeah, so D-line's already established. They got a couple contracts coming up. They've already got their big paydays. Carson Wentz has already got his big payday. A lot of people say he's on the back end of his career. He's a career backup if he doesn't have success here. So got to go with Carson Wentz.
I think this is an easy question, OC, and I don't mean any disrespect by that at all. I think it's Carson Wentz, and it's very easy to say that the defensive line was the strength of this defense last season. They held the rushing yards low. They were put into a lot of bad positions. The offense could not generate a lot of points in these games to put them in a good position. The defense was constantly being asked to do more than they were able to and being able to stop these guys, and they forced a lot of field goals. And Jonathan Allen leading the team in sacks from the defensive line. I don't think they have anything to prove. I think they need to continue and progress and do better, but they have proven that they are a stable and legit force in this league. It's just getting everyone else to kind of gel with that and build around that. So without a doubt, it's Carson Wentz. Hall said it perfectly. Given that he's on a 1-year deal, this could be his last ride as a starter. He, without a doubt, has a gigantic chip on his shoulder right now. What do you think, Corey?
Yeah, I mean, the disrespect for Carson Wentz is real, and I think the pressure is on him to succeed. And this defensive line is still highly rated with the guys that we have on there, even though I think a couple of the two dudes that we lost were – big impacts on there, and I think we're going to feel that this year. But the excuse or the picture will be they lost these guys. Carson Wentz is on his third team in 3 years, and he has been, let's be honest, he's been vilified like for no reason, because Booger Sugar Irsay couldn't get down and couldn't handle him. And then you had and then Philadelphia and Howie Roseman, because we know Howie Roseman's always doing stupid stuff, decided to draft the second coming of Tim Tebow and mess the whole situation up there. You know, some of it is Carson, but at the end of the day, he's got to come out here and prove it, or we're going to be like a soccer hooligan. Shout out to my folks across the pond, and we're going to be like, yo, you've got to get on out of here now. So yeah, the pressure is all on Carson, and I hope he rises to the occasion, because he's definitely going to need it going forward. So he can get paid, right? Everybody was trying to get paid.
Yeah, I do think it's absolutely crazy that Carson averages over 23 touchdowns per season in his career, and then averages less than 10 interceptions per season, and he's ranked literally at the bottom of every quarterback list, and anything that's ever talked about him just hampered. And it's crazy that these other quarterbacks aren't doing as much, don't show the consistency that Carson does with his numbers overall. It's crazy.
Mm-hmm. People have Trey Lance, who played like 2 games last year and was average at best. They have Trevor Lawrence, who literally through 17 games was completely horrible, and then played one good game against the Colts last year. Happened to beat Carson Wentz in the last game of the year. They got him ranked over him. Just like, what is going on, right?
Only thing
has to be like bizarre world right now.
You can obviously, those guys have potential. That's the one thing. And I feel like Carson, the media is so screwed up that they're like, all right, well, we know what he can do. He's past his prime. It's not going to get it back. It's not. But how many times have you seen players struggle somewhere, end up getting a change of scenery, just need a coach to believe in them, and then they go there and then they're produced again and they're completely fine. I think Carson is obviously under most pressure as compared to the defensive line, because you guys are 100% right. He's out. Like, this is it. This is his last chance. This is it for him. If he doesn't produce, unfortunately, it might be it. But like you were talking about, Hall, like, it's like, how can you even put some of these players over Carson, just like based off of what he does every year, even his average years, like he had last year for the Colts? Still a pretty good year. It's still better than any of those guys have had. It's still, and it's just ridiculous. But the D-line, I wouldn't necessarily say is under pressure, but they have underperformed compared to what people put their expectations as. Like Chase Young, Montez Sweat, those guys, they got to produce more. They will, but it's nowhere near what Carson's facing.
It's also crazy because, like, you can be like, oh, well, those guys are young. They have potential. Justin Fields, Trevor Lawrence, Zach Wilson, Trey Lance, whatever, blah, blah, blah. Okay, cool. You can base off potential. Carson's potential is, you've already seen his potential, MVP of the league type stuff. So his potential is still higher than these younger guys. So it's just crazy to me.
Yeah, it's weird. The hate is just unreal.
Yeah, and I'll even give y'all a hot take on this. If you look at Carson Wentz, you compare the numbers, he's very comparable to Matt Stafford. And I've been saying this all. Hey. People don't want to take back that iron curtain. And the thing is, I always say this: the Rams didn't need Matt Stafford. Matt Stafford needed the Rams.
Yes, he did.
And I think you can flip this around this year. Carson Wentz doesn't necessarily need the Commanders I think to redo his career. He needed somebody, but he just landed in our laps when we traded for him. So I think people need to take that in consideration. Now, people might think I'm crazy when I say this, but they are very comparable quarterbacks, big arms, mobile, and they will make crazy throws. They'll make crazy good and head scratching throws all the time. Right. So
yeah, and that would go to your point about Matt Stafford coming from their original place where they were drafted, didn't do much to give them talent around them, right? I mean, obviously they had Calvin Johnson before Matt Stafford got there, but everything that was added with Matt Stafford, they didn't do anything with it, obviously. But
if Taylor would have gave us 27-7 last year, people would be ready to call the next Kurt Warner, crown him as a franchise guy.
100%.
But because the national media is like, oh, well, 27-7, look at that offense. Look at his numbers, like blah blah blah. Everyone just assumes, oh, well, he's horrible, he's bad. It's like, no.
Another thing, straight up, but just to add to it, all when you were talking about the rookies, you're like the potential thing. It's true to an extent, but like then they have people like somebody who actually produced last year, like Mac Jones. Some lists will have him behind like Justin Fields and a Trey Lance. It's like, what in what world, or Zach Wilson? It's like, but he produced. He's young too. He's clearly showed like what he can.
Dude, I saw one list that listed Taylor Heinicke in front of Carson Wentz. I laughed hysterically. I was like, what is happening right now? But this next question, Corey, I want to go to you first. This is from our guy Ty Mack on Twitter. Thank you, Ty. He says, I've never been. So what's each of your favorite parts of training camp?
Favorite part of training camp? I think it's just, I think last year was my favorite training camp because I got to meet a lot of our fellow content creators and network and meet some of our friends in the media too, and you can really get a gauge of where folks are and stuff, and being close to the team and making those connections as well. I think it was Josh and Rio and we went in there. I think the CBS station out of Norfolk actually interviewed us, and there's me saying that we're coming for you, NFC East, and I was like 12 and 5. I don't think they got the memo at training camp, but no, it's a fun experience. It's just a good time to connect and kind of get the vibe of the team. And then I think it's a great culminating activity because I think the event at FedEx Field is part of training camp too, when they have the big practice. So yeah, I just like it, and it's renewal because everybody has hope at this time. It's not like baseball, right? We know people are going to be trash. We knew the Nationals were going to be trash this year. We all have hope in the NFL.
Absolutely. What about you, Reed?
So my favorite part was obviously probably going out there, probably signing pictures, signing autographs for the fans, getting to see Sam Cosmi with his shirt off. I'll tell you what, I think it's awesome that somebody like Jesse got to see Tamarick Hemingway stepping out of the hot tub with his shorts off, because I'm just kidding. That's alleged. We don't know if it was Tamarick Hemingway or not, but Jesse saw something.
It was Tamarick Hemingway,
and apparently it was huge. And that's why
we always refer to Bigfoot.
Right. You don't forget that type.
That one time that Jesse saw Bigfoot at training camp, it was hysterical.
Just a monster hog. The guy had to get therapy for it for at least a year. He's just about done.
Dude, the funniest part about it though, we were like standing watching regular practice. Like a couple hours later, we're just standing there. We're all together, just looking at practice, and all of a sudden, Reed out of nowhere goes, "Do you guys remember when Jesse saw Tamarick hog?"
I was so interested. I was more interested in that than what was going on the field. Honestly,
like, what did it look like?
It must have been frightening.
Ty, I will say one of my favorite parts about training camp, especially it's probably the interaction with the players. When I went back in the day when it was done at Ashburn, it was during the Santana Moss era. I remember this guy heckling Santana. I was like, Santana, I saw you at the club last night. How you feeling right now? And seeing Santana laughing and everything going along with it. And then last season with Montez Sweat and Chase Young, where they were literally like a stone's throw away from us.
They fried me.
Yeah, feet away from us. And
you
they
look
were just
the media.
They just stood there and talked to us, and that was
you
an awesome
fed?
time.
I was like, I'm not a Fed, and then I was like, all right, we got to get out of here.
But but obviously the other part of it is meeting up with everybody and just being able to experience it with people. Because the biggest takeaway from training camp was the actual Bigfoot thing, and it was because we had people around to be able to celebrate that with and be able to enjoy it. You know what I'm saying?
I always celebrate with my friends whenever I see a schlong I'm not supposed to see.
Pause.
Paul, do you have anything?
Y'all pretty much hit it on the head. I mean, just seeing the people you interact with and talk to on Twitter, being there as well, just like getting to see them, meet them in person. Just like players being like 10, 15 feet away from you, talking to them talking back, like joking around, stuff like that. So it's a good time, good experience. If you can ever get out there, definitely try to make it.
And the other one, I will put this in there, was being able to meet Jason Wright and Tonya Snyder, being able to talk with them and just get their ideas and just be able to pick their minds a little bit. I thought that was really, really cool and something that we don't get to experience at every training camp.
And Jason talking to me, and Jason was like, so what do you think? And I was like, I think that you guys should just make like a cool W, like take the current W that you have, put a couple lines in it, put a few lines in it, make the burgundy helmet, just make them like a matte all burgundy. Give us, it was cool that he listened to me, I think.
It was really cool. But this last question of this episode, guys, is from Scott Harley in the UK. Oi! We are historically slow at paying our own players. Are you confident the front office gets the right deals done in good time with none of the front seven walking out? Meaning like Payne. Who's next to get paid? Holcomb? Corey?
Yeah, I would think that I still don't believe the Deron Payne is getting paid thing. So I would say probably Cole Holcomb would be those guys. And I think what Rob Rogers is doing is flying under the radar because he got the one deal that he needed to get done before we went into no man's land. There's no franchise tag with Terry. We got him signed. So I think if they want a guy, our guy, that guy's going to be here. So yeah, and I think it'll be Cole Holcomb before it'd be Deron Payne. It's just something, the vibe around that situation still just got me. It's like I saw a tight end walk out of a hot tub and I wasn't supposed to see something. So, that's how I feel. Or like when I took a picture with Tonya Snyder and I had a beer in my hand and I looked like a 6-year-old kid. So, that is actually a true story. I got to find that picture.
That is hysterical.
That's funny. Yeah, that's good.
But I will say, Scott, I am confident that they'll get the deals done. I thought Bram on Monday night brought up a great point with Cameron Curl and Cole Holcomb based on their salaries not being that much as rookies. And yeah, they're going to command a lot on the free agent market, but they would be interested in signing a long-term extension now in order to generate some more income because you never know what's going to happen in the future. So I think those two guys are probably the biggest emphasis at the moment is Cole Holcomb and Cam Curl. I wouldn't be surprised if either one of those guys got inked before training camp. What do you think, Reed?
I think that obviously with what we did the past 2 years, re-signing Jonathan Allen, re-signing Terry McLaurin, I think that's huge because those are the two cornerstones of our team at the moment. So I think it's looking up. It's looking like we are serious about re-signing our core players. And you're right. I think it would end up being like a Cole Holcomb who's probably up next because I don't believe the Deron Payne noise either. And it sucks because I do like Deron Payne a lot. But I just think that you're going to have to put a lot of money in some of these other guys. Like if Montez has a big year, you're going to definitely want to get him inked up long term. Chase is going to be coming up after that. Gibson will be coming up. So there's some players that you do got to re-sign, and unfortunately, you will have to let some players go. So no, I don't think that they will re-sign everybody, but I do think that they're going to re-sign a majority of them.
Yeah, hopefully they were able to because we all knew that this time was coming. It was coming sooner rather than later. But Corey, this is going to wrap us up for this show, everybody. I can't thank you so much. I can't thank you enough for being able to submit your questions in. For us, they were great topics to be able to discuss. It obviously got the juices flowing a little bit with us. But I want to hear from you guys. We love your reactions to the pods, especially the funny things you have to say. I think somebody commented last time about Reed doing come on, Playboy, when you were talking about Zach Wilson. I thought that was hysterical. But before we get out of here, Corey, if you'd just like to plug your social media handle and your podcast, just where can people find you?
Yeah, you can find me on Twitter, Instagram at Sanchez405, and then on the warpath, trying to get to 3,000, kind of a little bit over 100 to go to get to 3,000. So
let's do it.
Let's get rocking and rolling here. And then you can find me and Tonya Snyder. Here it is for the people on YouTube on here. You can see there's there. I'll put it on the tweet when y'all tweet out.
Also, you might be able, if you're lucky, you might be able to find Corey getting out of a hot tub at training camp.
No. The black tape is gone off of that. We made sure we deleted that. I subpoenaed those, so I'm good. So
absolutely,
we're good.
Well, I thought we were going to see subpoenas. Anyway, good.
Pause.
What is wrong with you? What is wrong with you? Oh, that was fantastic.
Oh man, that might have been the best joke in the history of the Burgundy Zone podcast.
It's a good play on words.
Oh man.
You're a genius, man. My goodness. All right, everybody. Well, that's going to wrap us up for this show, which is quite an ending. We'll see you guys on Monday evening. I can't thank you enough for tuning in with us here, getting through this episode. You guys are awesome if you were to do that. We would love to hear your comments. Please comment on the video. We'd love to go back and forth with you. We just want to hear your thoughts on everything. All right, everybody. I'm Kyle.
I'm Hall.
I'm Reed. Yeah.
You can find him at Funny Reed on Twitter.
Yeah. I'm a former NFL scout for Bill Parcells and Bill Belichick, and Aaron Hernandez, nice guy, great guy.
All right, everybody. We'll see you on Monday. Have a great, safe weekend. Washington football. Woo! Hey, what's up, everybody? It's Kyle. I just wanted to say thank you so much for watching, and if you liked what you saw, make sure you hit the subscribe button and the notification bell. That way, you get notified when anything new is uploaded to the channel. Also, we just launched theburgundyzone.com. You can go there and find all of our latest news, articles, and the latest episodes that are uploaded. Again, we also have the Discord chat server, where all of our VIP folks are in, like Andy Burrows, Scott Hartley, Sergio Martin is in there as well. Don't miss out on the Discord chat server. Go and check that out. Until next time, everybody, Washington football. Woo!